It's no secret that sleep is vital to the overall function of the human body. Not getting enough rest can make a person more prone to infection, obesity, heart disease, and a myriad of other serious health problems. With this in mind, how much sleep would you say you get per night? You may be able to wake up and get going after 5 or 6 hours, but is that enough? The recommended amount for a healthy adult is between 7 to 9 hours per night. And it's not just about the number of hours you get, but the quality of your sleep as well. If you've ever been jet-lagged, you know all too well that departures from a sleep schedule can have some ill effects. This is because the human body follows a 24-hour circadian rhythm, or circadian cycle, that can be thought of as your internal clock. It regulates when you're awake or asleep, and helps your body coordinate when to carry out different internal functions.
Circadian rhythms have become part of medicine in that when one is thinking about when is your blood pressure high, when is your ability to sleep, it's all regulated by a circadian clock system that is throughout the entire body.
That's Dr. Fred Turek, a professor of biology at Northwestern University and the director of their Center for Sleep and Circadian Biology. Turek says your circadian rhythm is vital to a variety of bodily functions, and throwing off this internal clock has several negative effects.
People who are working during the nighttime, say from midnight to 8 a.m., and then trying to sleep during the day, have a much higher prevalence of a variety of mental and physical disorders. But what we've learned over the years is that any sort of disruption of our biological clock at the level of the whole organism, meaning all of our biological rhythms, or even at the level of a single tissue or organ such as the pancreas, it's not properly timed with all the rest of the circadian clocks in the body, then we can have a dysfunction of that particular organ or that particular tissue.
For astronauts in space who don't have sunrise and sunset keeping their internal clocks accurate, this can pose some serious health challenges.
NASA has been very interested and aware of the circadian issues, disrupting circadian rhythms, disrupting sleep, and they've responded very over the years such that the astronauts, for example, are given 8 hours of time to sleep, and they're roughly awake about 16 hours, and they're on a very fixed light-dark cycle, even in space, even though they're going around the Earth every 90 minutes, and so their day-night cycle is a 90-minute cycle. But for example, the International Space Station, but even on the shuttle, the light-dark cycle is controlled, and it's maintained constantly. They're not shift workers in the general sense of the term, because NASA makes sure that they sleep at the same time and are awake at the same time, unless there's some sort of event that needs to disrupt their sleep-wake cycle.
NASA scientists report that on average across missions, astronauts in space get about 6 hours of slumber per night. You may think that this number isn't that bad, but the quality of sleep is typically lower than on Earth, according to Dr. Emmanuel Urquieta. Urquieta is the Chief Medical Officer at the Translational Research Institute for Space Health, a key partner of NASA. He's also an assistant professor at the Center for Space Medicine at the Baylor College of Medicine. He says that the rapid eye movement phase, the deepest stage of sleep, is drastically reduced while in space.
It's during that phase that you get most of the sleep that, brings all of the benefits from sleeping. So even though you might have 6 hours of sleep, the phase of the sleep that gives you most of the benefits and gives you the mental refresh is reduced by 50%.
In addition to this deficit, Urquieta says that roughly 70% of astronauts on board space shuttles and at the International Space Station have needed sleeping pills to help fall or stay asleep. Along with medications, there are set protocols and routines in place to help signal the body that it's time to rest or wake up.
Usually they get waken up with some music that they play from Earth. The days try to be roughly 16 hours of work and, of activities, I would say work, but 16 hours of scheduled activities and 8 hours of sleep. But, the space station is not the ideal place to sleep. Usually, at least on the USOS, on the US segment, Each astronaut has his or her own living quarter. It's a small place. They have actually doors. They can have some privacy there. Some of them have some windows to look outside, tiny windows like portholes. And they have some of their personal items there, some family pictures. They have a computer, so they can get some privacy there. But that being said, it's still not an ideal place to sleep.
Spacecraft can be a noisy setting, with all of the fans and systems running 24/7. In addition to blocking out the white noise, astronauts have to get used to the peculiar feeling of sleeping without gravity. Instead of lying back on a firm mattress topped with lush pillows, they get their rest while floating around in a sleeping bag tethered to a wall.
The sleeping bag is really on the wall or the floor or the ceiling. It depends on what part of the station they are. Of course, they don't feel that they are on the sleeping on the ceiling or sleeping on the wall because there's no gravity, right? So there's no sensory motor or proprioception cues. But, it's not what you're used to, right? You're used to sleeping on your side, your front, or your back, but not sleeping technically standing up, right? So that's another thing that they're not, the proprioception cues that you normally get here on Earth when you're sleeping, they're not there in space.
Despite the hardships that arise from this lack of sleep, Urquiza says that in the short term, the comprehensive training and screening that astronauts undergo on Earth help prepare them to still perform even if they feel sleep-deprived. NASA is also developing new technologies to help aid sleep, including the development of a headpiece that astronauts could one day wear as they prepare for bed.
Imagine these sort of helmets that you will be wearing or headbands, and they're resonating at a very specific frequency. So this frequency goes into your brain, and then it helps you to, number one, to go to sleep, and number two, to stay sleeping, right? And this is completely non-pharmacological. So, all the medications that I was mentioning earlier, and not only these ones, but any medication that exists in the world, it has potential adverse events, right, and secondary effects.
Turek says that there's still much research that needs to be done to understand the long-term ramifications of living and sleeping in space.
We only have really good data for one person, really, Scott Kelly, I think, who has been in space for a year. And, to get to Mars and back is going to be about a 3-year mission. And NASA continues to study what is the effect of longer and longer time spent in space on the human biology, including the sleep-wake cycle. And we want to keep collecting data. And, since the mission to Mars is probably going to be in the 2030s, NASA, and I'll call it NASA, will be continuing to monitor the microbiota, the circadian rhythms, the sleep-wake cycle of individuals who are in space for long periods of time.
We do know that sleep is vital to each and every human, whether you're hitting the pillow while on Earth or in space. You can learn more about this topic and our guests, Dr. Fred Turek and Dr. Emmanuel Urquiza, by visiting viewpointsradio.org. For more behind the scenes, search Viewpoints Radio on Twitter and Facebook. This segment was written and produced by Amira Zaveri. I'm Gary Price.
Cardiovascular or CV disease is the #1 killer of adults in the U.S., and millions of people trying to reduce their risk of a heart attack or stroke may unknowingly be taking medications that are not proven nor FDA approved to reduce cardiovascular risk. Let's hear from cardiologist Dr. John Osborne.
Many people are unaware that after a failed outcome study, the FDA revoked the approval of fenofibrates when added to statins, as the risk outweighed the benefits to heart health. It's important to remember that statins, along with diet and exercise, can lower cardiovascular risk by about 25 to 35%, but persistent cardiovascular risk, which can lead to a life-threatening event, may remain. I would tell anyone still being prescribed fenofibrates, such as Tricor and Trilipix, with a statin, to talk to their doctor about FDA-approved therapies for cardiovascular risk reduction.
To learn more and get clear on the facts, visit itscleartomenow.com. Again, that's itscleartomenow.com.
Chuck E. Cheese needs you. They're hiring 3,500 employees nationwide to welcome families to its upcoming season of fun. As a work today, get paid tomorrow employer, Chuck E. Cheese offers its employees the ability to access up to $500 off their earned wages instantly after their first week of employment. Octavio Castaneda, Senior General Manager of 2 locations in Bell and Pasadena, California, joined the company in 1999.
Like 80% of the current Chuck E. Cheese restaurant managers, I grew up through the company. I started as a cast member, and now I lead a team of 36 people. Next month, we're kicking off my favorite season of fun, Chuck E. Cheese Halloween Bootacular. It's a great experience for guests and cast members because it's Halloween every day for 6 weeks.
Other benefits for eligible employees include medical, dental, scholarships, discounts, and 401k savings plans. Find out more at chuckejobs.com. That's chuckejobs.com. Or text CHEESE to 58046 for a complete listing of open positions.
New studies show for the first time that reducing air pollution may roll back the risk of dementia. Research reported at the Alzheimer's Association International Conference 2021 shows a clear connection between air quality and physical brain changes defining Alzheimer's disease. What's more, reducing fine particulate matter in the air is associated with slower cognitive decline and a 20% reduction in dementia risk. Claire Sexton is Director of Scientific Programs and Outreach at the Alzheimer's Association.
What's exciting is we're now seeing data showing that improving air quality may actually reduce the risk of dementia. Air pollution is bad for our brains and our overall health. This demonstrates the importance of policies and action by both governments and businesses that address air pollution.
Studies were conducted in large populations in the U.S. and France. Sexton says the findings are especially important in urban areas where higher levels of air pollution are common. Find out more at alz.org.
And that's Viewpoints for this week. Viewpoints is a production of MediaTrax Communications. Follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to learn more about upcoming shows. And find a library of past programs on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. Plus, you'll always find previous segments and more information about our guests at viewpointsradio.org. Join us again next week for another edition of Viewpoints.
Coming up on Viewpoints.
There will be no women among their leadership. There will be no women ambassadors as there have been. There'll be no women in any kind of council that they form.
What the Taliban takeover means for the people of Afghanistan. Then,
if you'd gone back in a time machine, you'd have seen T-Rex chasing a Triceratops.
What really happened to the dinosaurs? I'm Marty Peterson.
And I'm Gary Price. These stories in depth on your public affairs magazine, Viewpoints.